beyond the pseudo-religious rantings against a corrupt world, there is an ulterior and very practical motive for this morning's operation.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're discussing some of the most harrowing, upsetting, tragic, and bizarre cult scandals and tragic events.
People think that pride makes them great, but pride is covering up an inner deficiency of lovability.
The Solar Temple tragedy.
Here they were privy to startling revelations. Not only messages from their mysterious spiritual masters, but sometimes apparitions of the figures themselves.
A harrowing sequence of events unfolded across Switzerland, France, and Canada, orchestrated by a group known as the Order of the Solar Temple. This organization, rooted in a blend of esoteric beliefs, mysticism, and the allure of transcending the material world, promised its believers a passage to a higher spiritual plane.
Et l'Antéchrist, la seule façon de le tuer était un pieu au cœur. Et ça devait être fait par deux chevaliers.
However, this promise culminated in tragic deaths under the guise of achieving salvation from a society believed to be deteriorating. The leaders, exploiting their magnetic pull, convinced over 70 individuals that leaving their earthly constraints was a necessary step towards a new, purified existence beyond the stars. These events, spread out over 3 years, starkly highlighted the perilous consequences of unyielding belief in a catastrophic fate.
500 officers were involved in the manhunt. It began on Friday when cars were found in the forest belonging to cult members.
Heaven's Gate's transition.
Now you can say, well, I can't believe that. Well, it's up to you whether you believe that or not.
The serene setting of a San Diego mansion became the scene of a startling discovery. 39 bodies, each dressed identically in black shirts, sweatpants, and brand new Nike Decade sneakers, lay in bunk beds and on the floor. Helmed by Marshall Applewhite, the Heaven's Gate cult orchestrated a mass departure from life, believing that the Hale-Bopp comet, then near its closest approach to Earth, harbored the spacecraft that would take their souls to a higher existence.
We interviewed Chuck Humphrey, and he gave me this t-shirt. And true to his own beliefs, it says, Heaven's Gate, what if they're right?
Applewhite, a charismatic leader who fused Christian millenarianism with sci-fi interpretations of biblical prophecy, had convinced his followers to view their physical bodies as mere vessels to be shed. In preparation, people recorded farewell messages, expressing eagerness for their journey to what they called the next level.
Being out of the world proved to me, being out in the class, proved to me that this was the only thing for me.
The Rajnish Porum experiment.
The Rajnishis took off their red robes and put on regular clothing and went through the town with spray containers filled with salmonella.
The quiet expanse of Central Oregon became the unlikely stage for Bhagwan Sri Rajnish, later known as Osho. His acolytes established a commune aimed at creating a utopia founded on principles of dynamic meditation, free love, and communal living. However, the commune's practices soon created tension with local authorities. The conflict escalated into a series of legal battles over land use and zoning laws.
It's also been reported that the group amassed so many weapons they had more firepower than all the Oregon State Police east of the Cascades.
In 1984, in an attempt to influence county elections and gain political control, a faction within the commune executed the largest bioterror attack in United States history, poisoning salad bars at local restaurants with salmonella, sickening over 750 people. This terrible event not only exposed the dark undercurrents within the commune, but also the vulnerability to ideological extremism.
He pleaded guilty to immigration violations, was deported, and died in India in 1990.
If you're interested in learning more about cults in today's world, keep watching until the end of this list for the 10 most disturbing cults that are still active.
Hello, everyone. This is Shoko Asahara.
The Manson family spiral into darkness.
It's not nice to snitch, Shorty.
Charles Manson and his groupies, known as the Manson Family, created a wave of terror that shocked the nation. Manson, a charismatic figure with a troubled past, attracted various lost people disillusioned by society. Settling at Spahn Ranch in California, Manson preached a doctrine that combined apocalyptic prophecy with personal grievances, culminating in what he called helter-skelter, an anticipated race war he believed his actions could initiate.
When Terry hears me play, he's going to lose his mind, which means the world gets to hear my music. And then all the lost young loves during the mayhem and the killing will hear my music, and they will know that they have a home.
In August 1969, this dangerous mix of delusion and loyalty manifested in a series of brutal incidents, most notoriously the murders at 10,050 Cielo Drive, which claimed the life of actress Sharon Tate and 4 others. The trial that followed captivated the public, with Manson and several family members receiving life sentences.
Every bit of it was planned out by Charles Manson.
The tragedy of the People's Temple.
He could rail. I mean, he could just light up. I mean, his whole body punctuated what he was saying.
In the jungles of Guyana, the People's Temple, led by Jim Jones, culminated in one of the most harrowing tragedies of the 20th century. Promising a utopian community free from the social injustices of the United States, Jones lured over 900 people to Jonestown. However, beneath the guise of socialist paradise and racial harmony lay a regime of fear, manipulation, and control. The community was subjected to intense indoctrination, forced labor, and rehearsals for a revolutionary mass departure from life.
It's such a joy and great pleasure being here because of Father's love. We are trying to make, and we are making, a place of refuge for all of you here.
On November 18, 1978, under Jones's directive and amid mounting external scrutiny, the community was coerced into ingesting a cyanide-laced drink. This act resulted in the largest single loss of American civilian life in a deliberate act until September 11, 2001.
And I'll say this about November 18th. I felt I'd lost a family.
The movement for the restoration of the 10 Commandments of God. In the year 2000, a devastating event unfolded in Uganda, involving a doomsday cult known as the Movement for the Restoration of the 10 Commandments of God. This cult promised salvation in the face of an impending apocalypse they claimed would occur at the turn of the millennium. As the predicted apocalypse date passed without incident, doubts and unrest grew among the flock.
We believe there was a systematic extermination of followers, and we believe this was after the prophecy failed to materialize.
In a tragic turn, over 700 members lost their lives in a fire at the cult's church in Kanungu. Investigations later suggested a sinister reality, uncovering multiple sites with victims, indicating a premeditated act by the leadership to silence dissent and cover up the failed prophecy.
These people knew what they were doing. They were doing it systematically.
The Ant Hill Kids Commune.
But they actually duped people. They made people believe that they were just wanting to have this nice little lifestyle.
Controlled by Roch Moise Thériault in Canada, this commune started as an offshoot seeking spiritual enlightenment and escape from societal norms. Thériault, charismatic and manipulative, initially drew in the curious with promises of a utopian life based on shared values and back-to-nature living. However, it all quickly devolved into a nightmare of exploitation and control, with Thériault asserting absolute authority over his followers' lives, including their health, relationships, and autonomy.
You know, we don't have no power, no possibility to think anymore. As I said, we are zombies.
The commune's internal practices, hidden behind a facade of religious devotion and communal living, included extreme and inhumane disciplinary measures that Thériault justified as necessary for purification and spiritual growth. These actions birthed unimaginable suffering, and in some cases, loss of life among the members. Thériault's reign of terror ended when authorities finally intervened.
With Roch Thériault behind bars, people began asking how a man of God could have become so ungodly.
Shinrikyo's Tokyo attack.
グルとはこういうもんだって言ってついてきた弟子たちの観念を崩されますよね。ガシャガシャガシャっと。その時点でもグルについていけるか、あるいはもう失望してやめちゃうかと。
In March 1995, the world was stunned by a shocking act of violence in the heart of Tokyo, Japan. Shinrikyo, a cult led by Shoko Asahara, orchestrated a sarin gas attack on the Tokyo subway system, targeting innocent commuters during the morning rush hour. Asahara, who blended apocalyptic religion with his own prophetic visions, convinced others that the end of the world was imminent and that they needed to act to save humanity.
They didn't fit in the Japanese society. They didn't really fit in this kind of super consumerist
type of society.
The traumatic event resulted in 13 deaths and injured thousands, causing widespread panic and fear. This event marked one of the deadliest acts of domestic extremism in Japan's history, bringing global attention to the dangers posed by cults with access to chemical weapons.
Many passengers head upstairs for fresh air, but the sarin is already in their blood, poisoning them.
The Branch Davidian siege.
I got a call that morning. It's a little siege going on in Waco, Texas, and we don't think it's going to last more than 2 days. I was there for 51 days.
A sect that splintered from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The Branch Davidians entered the global spotlight in early 1993, culminating in a 51-day siege at their compound in Waco, Texas, led by David Koresh, who claimed prophetic status and demanded absolute loyalty from his devotees. They became the focus of federal attention due to allegations of illegal activities.
Lord, I have preached righteousness in the great congregation. What's he going to preach? Seven seals.
The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms attempted to execute a search warrant at the Mount Carmel Center, sparking an initial deadly exchange of gunfire and leading to a prolonged standoff with the FBI. The siege ended tragically on April 19, 1993, when the compound caught fire under controversial circumstances, resulting in the deaths of Koresh and 76 of his followers.
These men came in here and they started firing on us. The bullets came through the walls and people were killed, people were injured.
The NXIVM Scandal.
I'm an unconventional person, and when conventional solutions don't work, maybe the unconventional way of thinking does.
Initially introduced to the public as a professional development company offering executive success programs, NXIVM spiraled into infamy in 2017 following revelations that peeled back layers of a much darker reality. Founded by Keith Raniere, NXIVM attracted thousands, including celebrities and wealthy professionals, with promises of personal growth and professional empowerment.
I'm in awe a lot of you.
Why?
It's that something like you exists, you know.
However, beneath the veneer of self-improvement lurked a hierarchical organization that manipulated and exploited members. Central to the scandal was DOS, a secretive subgroup within NXIVM, where women were branded with Raniere's initials and coerced into servitude under the guise of mentorship. High-profile arrests, including Raniere and actress Allison Mack, brought to light practices of psychological control, exploitation, and forced labor.
You look terrible when you control. You look beautiful when you don't.
Before we get to our number one pick, if you're fascinated by the shocking cult scandals and events from this list, be sure to stay tuned for our list of the 10 most disturbing cults that are still active and that you'd never want to meet next.
You had to have at least 3 wives while you lived on Earth. And if you did not, you could not reach that highest degree.
The Mammoros Nightmare.
The professor of anthropology studied cults before, but wasn't prepared for what he was about to see.
In 1989, the discovery of a ranch in Matamoros, Mexico revealed the nightmarish activities of a cult presided over by Adolfo Constanzo, shocking both local communities and international observers. Costanzo, a self-proclaimed sorcerer, and his believers practiced ritualistic human sacrifices, believing these acts would grant them protection and power.
Authorities paraded 4 suspects who admit to cult involvement. 2 who say they helped abduct Mark Kilroy on March 14th as he celebrated spring break in Matamora.
The investigation, initially triggered by the disappearance of an American college student, uncovered gruesome evidence of the cult's rituals, including altars adorned with human remains. This case highlighted the dangerous intersection of criminal enterprise and perverse spiritual beliefs, challenging law enforcement agencies across borders and drawing public attention to the vulnerabilities within communities that can be exploited by charismatic leaders promising power and protection.
They fed him some bread and water, we understand, and then one of them ultimately came up behind him with the machete and hit him across the back of the head with it.
Are there any other movements or events that could be on this list? Let us know in the comments.
He intended to teach each and every one of them to be exactly what he wanted them to be.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at 10 disturbing cults you never want to meet. For this list, we're looking at bizarre cults that are somehow currently active. There are inactive cults that are far more sinister, such as Jonestown, but we'll save those for a different list.
You would be sworn in as a member, and you would also swear not to reveal any of the going-ons inside this this group.
Which of these do you find the strangest? Let us know in the comments below. The Rajnish movement. Bhagwan Sri Rajnish, a controversial philosophy scholar and professor, founded his movement in the late 1960s, early 70s. He dismissed established religions and instead focused on free thought, meditation, and sexual freedom.
Now there are two ways. Either repress sex as it has been done by all the so-called religious traditions of the world, or transform it. I am for transformation.
He also had a marked interest in communist literature, which influenced his teachings. He moved his facility to Oregon in the early 1980s after attracting too much controversy in India, yet found the same hostilities in the States. In order to gain political influence, the movement committed crimes such as mass local salmonella poisoning and an attempted assassination of a U.S. attorney. He was then deported, and the movement's commune was re-established in India in 1985. Rajnish died in 1990, but the movement, now called Osho, is still very much active.
What's going to happen to your holy man?
Bhagwan had always told me that when things get too difficult for him, he will sit in his chair, take an injection, and disappear.
The Order of the Solar Temple.
The order attracted many successful upper-middle-class people, disillusioned with conventional churches, yet hungry for spiritual experiences.
The Order of the Solar Temple, or International Order of Chivalry Solar Tradition, was founded in Geneva in 1984. The order took its influence from the Knights Templar, which had been reformed into several factions in 1805. In its heyday, the order had a presiding council, as well as multiple lodges around the world, in which they would perform initiation rites and ceremonies.
Only the elite, who had passed all the initiations from novice to knight, were treated to the secrets of the inner sanctum. Here, they were privy to startling revelations.
The order believed that an apocalyptic event would occur sometime in the mid-90s, and that in order to survive, they had to achieve a higher plane of existence. In the mid-90s, over 70 of its members were murdered or took their own lives.
Investigators say the cult was obsessed with death and considered it an illusion. Experts say cult leaders told their followers that fire would lead them to a new world on another planet.
With more to follow. Despite this, the group is still thought to have between 140 and 500 active members. Realism.
The Raelians, now 30,000 strong worldwide, believe that space beings created humans through genetic experimentation.
Though its classification as a cult is sometimes debated, Realism was, or is still, at some point in the cult category. It's essentially what's called a UFO religion, and was founded in France by Claude Vorilhon in 1974.
It's not only the scientific aspect of creating life, but also the political, religious belief, sociology, everything is. We are entering a new world which is completely different. But there is no reason
a better world?
A much better world.
They believe that an alien race known as Elohim created humans. The Elohim have been mistaken for gods historically, and any prophetic figure such as Jesus or Muhammad was created by them. Vorilhon, known as Rael, is the 40th and final prophet. Followers believe that the world is in an age of apocalypse, and that new technologies must be developed, after which time the Elohim will return to Earth and share their extraterrestrial knowledge with us. Current Raelian members were counted at around 18,000 in 2017.
The Rael movement has two goals. One is to spread the message, and two, to build the embassy.
Aleph.
Inside, sect members were undergoing survival training. Chemicals and drugs were used to raise, then remove states of anxiety.
Shinrikyo, or more recently Aleph, was founded in Japan in 1987 by Chizuo Matsumoto, later known as Shoko Asahara. It's a doomsday cult, and its beliefs combine aspects of Indian and Tibetan Buddhism, Hinduism, Christian millenarianism, yogic practices, and the prophecies of Nostradamus.
The religion is a blend of yoga and mysticism, with bits of Buddhist, Hindu, and Christian teachings thrown in. His catchiest sales point, though, was a claim to levitation.
It started off fairly tame, but eventually the cult became criminal, with accusations of extortion, murder, and forced membership, among other things. they performed a number of attacks. At some point, the group began to manufacture sarin gas and were responsible for the attack on the Tokyo subway in 1995, which left upwards of 1,000 injured. A number of the more prominent members were executed in 2018, but there were still indications of active membership as of 2019.
About 20 members live here, an austere lifestyle driven by the desire to spread the Master's teachings.
Hello, everyone. This is Shoko Asahara.
12 tribes.
If you're not in, you're out. If you're not with me, you're against me. If you want to have a strong identity, create a strong enemy, and then you really know who you are.
Founded in Tennessee during the evangelical Jesus movement of the 1970s, the 12 tribes might seem like a simple, wholesome community on the surface. It aspires to recreate the original Christian church as depicted in the Book of Acts. However, it allegedly exerts authoritarian control over its followers' lives and promotes strict corporal punishment, reportedly by parents and non-parents alike, which has led to accusations of child abuse.
Tessa remembers being sent out to work on her own when she was just 5 years old.
Sometimes working in kitchens, like preparing food for the whole rest of the community, or in like candle factories. So I remember being like 4 or 5 years old working with this boiling wax.
Once followers reach a certain level, they're allegedly instructed that Jews are cursed for murdering Jesus, that gay people should be put to death, and that black people are naturally servants to whites. The group has often flown under the radar, but there's a lot more going on beneath the smiling and folk dancing.
They control your logic and your thinking, and they control your money.
Happy Science.
So Happy Science have so many teachings that you can learn about them. So that is a lot of wisdom you got learn.
Founded in 1986 by former businessman Ryuho Okawa, Happy Science focuses on a fourfold path to happiness. Members of the group attend seminars and training in order to climb the group ladder. They worship El Cantare, a being that is said to have been born over 300 million years ago on Earth and reincarnated through time until its current incarnation, which is, of course, Okawa himself.
Ryuho Okawa. This guy's the supreme god of Earth, more powerful than Jesus, Allah, and Moses combined.
さらに私は、ブッダも魂の兄弟の一人で、ブッダも地上に送り込んだ。2500年前に送った。
The problem with this one comes in the form of major uncredited claims. For example, that the organization can cure the pandemic with, quote, spiritual vaccines. Okawa's own son has left the group and subsequently denounced his father's actions. Happy Science claims to have 11 million followers. However, a former member has said it's more like 30,000.
There are membership fees, there are donations for prayers, for blessings. Members may kind of rise in status based on donation to Okawa and his larger project.
The Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Every aspect of this family's life, who they marry, what they wear, even what they eat, is controlled by the man they call their prophet, Warren Jeffs.
The LDS Church spawned some fundamentalist sects when the core religion opted to renounce the practice of polygamy. Those who wished to continue the practice branched off, remaining Mormon but on their own terms. Polygamy remains illegal, however, and in 1953, an entire FLDS community was arrested in Short Creek, Arizona, modern-day Colorado City, and most had their children taken away from them.
We were taught from birth that in order to get what they called the highest degree of the celestial kingdom, you had to have at least 3 wives while you lived on earth. And if you did not, you could not reach that highest degree.
A compound in Texas was raided in 2008 after Child Protective Services was made aware of allegations of abuse. Over 400 children were taken from the compound and placed in CPS custody.
We felt like the children out there on the property were in danger, and that's when it became a very large operation.
Leader of FLDS, Warren Jeffs, remains in his position, despite being in prison for life after acts against minors. The sect currently has between 6,000 and 10,000 followers. Superior Universal Alignment, the second UFO cult on this list, Superior Universal Alignment, or Lineamiento Universal Superior, was founded by Valentina Giandraghi in 1981. She claimed to have received messages from extraterrestrials warning her of destruction. If, however, she shared their warnings with others, she and her followers would be saved. Similar to the Raelians, Sua believes that Jesus was actually an extraterrestrial messenger. They also believe that males born after 1981 are evil, and that their lives should end as payment to the superior beings. Between 1981 and 1993, 19 Brazilian boys disappeared, were mutilated, and left to die in the woods. The guilty cult members were sentenced, but Giandraghi was acquitted. The cult is still active and has been running a website since 2009. The Family International.
Berg preached to the hippie generation about Jesus and recruited them to join him in his all-consuming drive to save souls.
The Children of God, more recently the Family International, was founded in 1968 by David Berg and was immediately subject to controversy as it used sex to lure potential members, which was Berg's own invention, which he called flirty fishing. They established colonies worldwide, as many as 130 in 70 countries. The Family International draw their beliefs from the Bible, yet with a heavy emphasis on loving Jesus, which is done through sexual interaction. Over time, there have been a large number of child mistreatment allegations raised against them.
Reportedly, keeping children is a cult policy. While longing for her 4 lost children, Vivian lived here in this small apartment in Sioux Falls, disoriented, unable to hold a job, and subsisting on welfare.
Celebrities such as River and Joaquin Phoenix, as well as Rose McGowan, were partially raised in this group before finding their way out. TFI is still active, albeit as an online community, boasting 1,450 members.
We were trafficked, we were moved constantly, we were never taught anybody's names. So it's very difficult to learn your abusers' names. And
You think that was by design?
Oh, absolutely.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. NXIVM.
To understand NXIVM, NXIVM is the umbrella company.
Founded in 1998 by Keith Raniere and Nancy Salzman, NXIVM started out as a self-help group which offered classes called Executive Success Programs. In 2017, former members urged authorities to investigate, initially for a subgroup within NXIVM called The Vow. It was a group of women branded with Raniere's initials and on a rotation to have relations with the founder and recruit members.
You think the person who's being branded should be completely nude and sort of held to the table like a, sort of almost like a sacrifice? I don't know if that's a feeling of submission.
In a sort of exceedingly complex relationship scheme. On top of this, in 2018, charges were brought against Raniere and 5 female members for a number of crimes including extortion, sex trafficking, and the list goes on. Raniere got 120 years in prison. As of 2020, a number of groups branched from NXIVM are said to be active and recruiting.
We didn't even know that we were being experimented on. We thought we were just kind of learning and growing, but really they were observing and watching how we responded to the lack of sleep, how we responded to lack of food, how all of these things affected our psyche, and we were very weak. We were weak mentally and we were weak physically.
Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.